I like podcasting. It's
Oh,
a
good.
good time. Well, I listen to like 30, so.
How do you have time? When do you have time to do anything? I mean, you're always, This is Inside Look. I'm Jeff Lyons, along with the musical director of the Evansville Philharmonic Orchestra, Maestro Roger Kalia. Welcome to Inside Look.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
I appreciate
Pleasure to
you
be here.
shoehorning me in. You are the busiest guy in town right now. We're recording this a few days before you're going to perform Star Wars, the movie, and you're doing the score behind that.
That's right. We're doing the full film, Star Wars: A New Hope, and it's a two-hour film. This is the first Star Wars film back, 1977?
Something like that.
And it won Best Original Score, this iconic John Williams score, which is so epic, so memorable. I think everyone can sing along to the Star Wars theme. And we are doing it with the full film showing. We're going to have a projection screen above the orchestra, and I am going to be conducting an 80-piece orchestra with a the full film, of course, full score, the original score, I should say. And it's going to be really exciting and special. That
must put a little extra pressure on you because you got a movie playing, so you kind of have to keep up, right? I mean, you can't get behind or ahead.
I have to memorize and internalize these tempos, and luckily I have some aids that help. I have a click track, an in-ear monitor, which plays a click, and then I have a screen, a monitor in front of me. So the podium's here, and the monitor is right above. And I have these streamers, which are vertical lines going from left to right, different colors, punches, which are little clicks, and it's all meant to help line up the music with the film, because the worst thing is when you see an explosion on this from the movie and God forbid, the music doesn't line up, and then
3 seconds later you hear this big crash.
Exactly.
That's not quite right. This is making me nervous even hearing about this.
I spend hours and hours in front of my computer screen with the in-ear monitor, just practicing along and singing the score to myself to make sure I have the timing right. But you never know. You're responsible for 80 musicians, and they're not on the click track. It's just the conductor.
They're watching you.
So hopefully. It's a lot of pressure, and it's something new. I enjoy it, though, because I love this music. I grew up, listening to the music of John Williams, and Star Wars Jurassic Park is probably my favorite of his. Yeah. And so it's really special to bring this music to Evansville and do this for our final concert of the 90th anniversary, which has just been a fantastic season. And I know this concert in particular is sold out, or it's very close to sold out.
Very close. I looked last night, there's like 6 seats in the very back. It's probably next to you helping with the click track. They put that on the tickets. Well, let's talk about growing up. So where did the music come in for you? Were you just were born a musician, or did you what began that process?
Yeah, so I grew up in Manhasset, New York, a town on Long Island, about 30 minutes east of New York City, and no one in my family is a musician. There is no musical background. No one in the family. I'm an only child, and my parents were not musicians. They appreciated music. They would listen to all types of music, a lot of rock and roll, pop music from like their time, even Simon Garfunkel, the Bee Gees, stuff like that. But they were not serious musicians in any way. So I chose the trumpet in 4th grade because my grandfather was a big fan of Louis Armstrong. So he always had like Louis Armstrong playing in his apartment when I would go there, and I liked the sound. I said, who is this? Yeah. And sure enough, when we 4th grade rolled around, you have the opportunity to choose an instrument.
Right.
I chose the trumpet.
After you suffer through the recorder first, right? You had to play the tonad or the recorder.
3rd grade with the recorder. You're absolutely right. And I chose the trumpet because of those Louis Armstrong recordings that I heard, and also because you look at a clarinet or a saxophone and it has like 100 keys. The trumpet had 3 valves.
Yeah, you could almost get it by chance, right?
Right. I said to myself, how hard can it be?
Yeah.
But it's very hard.
Of course.
It's very challenging.
As is everything with the orchestra. I think people kind of look at it, if a casual observer or even a seasoned, music fan, you go to the concert and you just kind of take for granted everybody knows what they're doing and it's all going to come out together. But there's so many hours and years of preparation and education involved. So how did you transition from trumpet then to leading the show,
Leading
to being
the show
a conductor?
And I always tell people, like, you have to master an instrument before you become a conductor, because you're responsible for all these musicians who play all these different instruments. You have to have an understanding of what it's like to sit in that seat. And you know, when I'm on the podium, I think back to those times when I was in the back of the orchestra, and you know, what worked, what didn't work, what did I like from the conductor. So I try to remember that when I'm on the podium and take those traits, those positive traits, and bring them to the podium. But to answer your question, it was high school when I first got the conducting bug. I joined the local youth orchestra, and we had an incredible summer tour to 8 cities in China, out of all places.
Wow.
It was incredible to be a junior in high school and tour the China, a place I had never been to.
Yeah.
We went to Beijing, Shanghai, all these big cities, and it was unlike anything I've ever experienced.
And music is a universal language anyway, so you can go any place and play. And was your experience with foreign audiences that they were more appreciative, less appreciative than American audiences? I mean, what did you think?
It was different. They were very appreciative.
Yes.
You know, they would throw flowers after performances from the seats onto the stage, which I thought was really neat. And we would go into the lobby after a concert, sign autographs. I'm a high school kid signing autographs for the audience. How cool was that?
Yeah.
And that stayed with me. You know, and also it was just, I was around incredible musicians. I mean, everyone was so talented. At my high school, I was one of the better trumpet players, but in the youth orchestra, they were all at my level or better. I mean, it was very inspiring. And the conductor was the one that really grabbed my attention because he was so inspiring, the way he would motivate the orchestra, the way he would move his hands. I had never seen anything like that. And I would say from that, I started to, because you have to understand, I had never played in an orchestra until that point. I was more from the band world, marching band, and it was the orchestral repertoire that really made me also want to go into this field of conducting. It was so good to perform Tchaikovsky and Brahms and Beethoven. Those were my favorite composers, and I was so honored, and it was so interesting to play these works for the first time.
Yeah. So do you think that the instrument reflects the personality of the player? Like if you walked into a room of musicians and didn't know what they played, after 5 or 6 minutes of talking, could you say, okay, there's the string player, there's the horn player, that's got to be a percussionist? I mean, does it match sometimes?
There are stereotypes with the instruments and the personalities, certainly. It's so funny being a trumpet player. They say, oh, trumpet players are so full of themselves and they want to be the boss. And sure enough, I was never really... Everyone always said to me, listen, you should be more of like a trombone player. They're more laid back. And I was always more laid back.
My daughter was a student at Indiana, at Jacobs School of Music, at voice and music education. But after she'd been up there a couple of years, we were talking about her friends and everything. And oftentimes it would say, oh, horn player. It just kind of like, well, okay, or a string player.
Yeah.
And like that was supposed to mean something, But then I kind of got to figure it out after a while. So
well, there are a lot of jokes about conductors, sopranos, and violists out of all.
That's true.
I'm not gonna say any.
No,
but it is always funny to
we're
know
still
that
rated clean on
yes.
on the podcast site. So when was your first gig then conducting for reals? Like now you got 80 pieces. You've prepared a piece. You've got to go out there and do it.
Right.
And I think. Again, and I kind of represent just the guy in the audience, although I've seen it from both sides, and it's fascinating on the other side, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I think some people just think you just walk out and pick up that stick, but obviously there's a lot of preparation that goes in. So what was the first time you had to actually do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let me go back a little bit because, I mentioned the youth orchestra and being a trumpet player, and I ended up pursuing a music major in music education at a school in upstate New York called the Crane School of Music at the State University of New York, Potsdam, SUNY Potsdam. And they had a really good music program, especially for music educators in the state of New York. If you went to Potsdam, you would essentially become a band director, orchestra director in the state of New York. And at the time, I really did not know what I wanted to pursue. I knew I wanted to play trumpet, and I knew that the conducting seed had been planted from my youth orchestra days. Fast forward to sophomore year of college, I'm taking a conducting 101 class, which is required of all music majors, and I absolutely adored it. It felt natural. It was really very, it was fun. It was enjoyable. Not that trumpet wasn't, but I'll be honest, I had terrible anxiety, stage fright with trumpet. I would play a solo and I would start shaking and my lip would quiver. And I said, how am I going to be a professional trumpet player if this is happening?
Yeah.
And sure enough, there are ways to battle your nerves, but it was really frustrating. And conducting, on the other hand, was so natural. And I liked working with people, large groups of people, and that was the greatest thing about being a conductor. You're working with people who want to get better, who want to make music. And as a trumpet player, not that I enjoyed my years, but you're in the back of the orchestra. You're a little bit isolated, and I wanted to be part of this community of musicians. Anyway, my first gig though was in college. I was conducting a musical, How to Succeed in Business Without Even Trying.
Right.
And I was hired to be the music director of this production at Clarkson University, which is an engineering school, but they had a music theater non-major program. So it consisted of musicians from the Crane School of Music, some actors from Clarkson, and it was a great opportunity. And also I was the assistant conductor of the school symphony at the time, so I was taking lessons with the orchestra director there and still playing trumpet. And fast forward, ended up pursuing my master's degree in conducting because you can't major in conducting. You can only do a graduate degree in conducting.
Is that right?
Yeah, there are no undergraduate programs out there in conducting because they want you to master an instrument.
An instrument first, and then you go on through.
And then, I have to say, Indiana was where I did my doctorate then, IU.
Bloomington.
Which was, that's a whole other story. But that was really special to get into IU, which is this amazing, as you know, music school. Your daughter goes there.
Sure.
It's one of the top in the country. And when I got in there, it was such an honor and blessing to be a part of that community.
So did you get to conduct like the opera or the ensembles that they have there? I mean, how did they? Well, I guess what I'm getting at, it's not like driver ed, where you just go out and there's like the real conductor and then the student conductor. I mean, it would be very difficult to get practice before 80 musicians, right?
You're absolutely
because you can't just get a bunch of guys together and say, hey, I just want to practice conducting.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
You can't go into a practice room and have an 80-piece orchestra.
Right.
Whereas an instrumentalist, that's what we do. We go into a practice room, we play. With conducting, there are a lot of the first time you're on the podium, you're going to make mistakes, and that's how you learn, by doing it over and over, like anything.
Sure.
Except that you have 100 people critiquing you and watching you, and you learn as much from the teacher who's observing you as the musicians. And part of it is in those early years, especially at IU, which was great, is there was a lab orchestra where the conductors would rehearse and conduct this orchestra 3 times a week, and we would conduct all of the great masterworks, everything from Beethoven to Mozart to opera scenes to even newer music.
Yeah.
And this was an opportunity to have 20 minutes with this orchestra. You make mistakes, you learn, you video record yourself. That was a big part of it. Video recording yourself and then observing the next day how you look. Does this gesture mean something? Because as a conductor, it's nonverbal communication. The more you talk, you're doing something wrong, in the rehearsals, that is.
Right.
All of what we do is nonverbal, showing what we want through our face, through our hands, and every conductor has their own language, their own unique language. We all know the time patterns. 4/4 pattern is this, but how do you express it? So it's very subjective in some ways.
Yeah, and I had the good fortune of being involved with the youth concerts earlier this year.
That was so much fun.
And so I had that's the great part about playing the weather card, is I get access to things a lot of people don't see sometimes, and one of those is to sit on the stage with the orchestra and not have, I had responsibility. I had to narrate or whatever, but I wasn't playing music. I was just an observer, basically, and so I could watch you from the other side. And I think that's a real loss for the audience. They don't get to see that side. We see your back and we hear the results. But it was fascinating because it's like, it's almost like you're stuck. You're not stuck, but you can only use your body and your face and everything to get them to do things. And then the other interesting thing for me anyway was because we did repeated concerts, I heard the same pieces several times, and each time it was a little, I mean, they were all, professional, good. Probably not perfect. I mean, it sounded good to me, but I could tell, some days, it would be a little different. So I guess that's how you keep it fresh. And plus, you never know when you walk in what mood the musicians are in, right? I mean, even though they're professionals and they're prepared. So how do you gauge that? Like, first couple of bars in, you're like, oh boy, it's going to be one of those, or you're like, wow, they're really on today.
Yeah. You're somewhat of a psychologist on the podium. You have to read the room, right? And you go in there expecting that the musicians know their parts, they know the rhythms, they know the notes. And they're all professionals. They all want to do a great job. They want to present the best possible product. And as a conductor, I spend hours and hours, days, months before the first rehearsal internalizing the music. So I have a score with all the different parts, the flute, the oboe, the clarinet, you name it. It's all in this book, this score. And I mark my scores in such a way that I internalize the notes, the phrases, and sometimes I'm not a great pianist, but I'll play some of the notes on from the score on the piano. I'll listen to recordings. I listen to a lot of recordings. Spotify. We have all these streaming services. Why not take advantage of that?
Yeah.
And I never try to imitate any of those, but I take certain aspects of the recordings that I really thought was maybe unusual or effective and that influences my interpretation a little bit.
Yeah.
But really it's about coming up with your own interpretation and then bringing that interpretation to the musicians.
And that's what I was going to ask next then was what is sort of the Roger Kalia stamp? Like, in other words, if you come in and everybody has to play, let's say, I don't know, it's a Beethoven Fifth Symphony, something everybody knows, bum, 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 bum. And so you probably have, I mean, they're absolute. You probably have to always do the notes and the rhythm. But then beyond that, it's up to you to kind of make it, stretch here, louder there, softer there. So where does that come from? And then how does that differ? So like if another conductor walks in, they're like, no, we're going to do it this way. So how do you get the orchestra to trust you and follow you when you have an interpretation? Yeah.
First off, just being 100% prepared. They know if you don't know the score. They'll know right away. Within the first 10 seconds, it's how you walk on the podium. Sometimes they say, oh, it's going to be a long one. It's going to be a long rehearsal. So you go in there with a vision of how you want this piece to go. And it's interesting you mentioned, like, other conductors. You have 5 conductors conducting the same piece. It's going to sound completely different with each conductor based on a number of factors, not even the body language, but the way they look. There's so much that goes into it. For me, preparation, having a rehearsal plan, knowing what I want to accomplish. So I write it out and I try to accomplish it. Sometimes it's to the minute. It's like 8:01 to 8:06.
Right.
We're gonna do this section, and let's make sure we address these aspects. But the good news is the musicians of the EPO are so talented that oftentimes I take inspiration from them, meaning, oh, I didn't think of that phrase, the way the oboe player, for instance, Elizabeth Robertson, our principal oboe, the way she phrased that, I like that. No need to change anything. Yeah. So I take inspiration from them. It's a give and take. It's like a conversation with the person. There's a lot of trust that goes into it.
And there's a lot of pressure, too, because I sat in on a rehearsal. There's a big clock. It's like a scoreboard in a football stadium, and it's ticking down because the musicians are literally on the clock. You're paying them.
Absolutely.
They're professionals.
Absolutely.
So you have to use every last minute, second to get your stuff in. Does that give you the nerves a little bit, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, well, especially for the ones that we did, Jeff, those YPCs, unfortunately, we only have one rehearsal to put it all together, and that's a big program. You think about it because there's so many different pieces. We had, 10 pieces on that, and I think given the dialogue, that's sometimes even harder than putting the music together. And that's a whole other topic, is how do you turn around and just address an audience then? Because a big part of what we do with those education concerts are addressing the audience. But you're right, the clock plays a major role. And that's why I write out the rehearsal plan.
Well,
I have to be by the minute because I can't waste a single second, or we might not get to this section. And we need to get through all the music, of course, but then you also have to work on what interpretation you want to bring from each piece.
Right.
So if you just rehearse the piece, it's not going to be enough. So being a conductor, it's all about time management. It's all about really realizing, all right, we have to accomplish this, and if we don't get to it, well, what's plan B?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I've had so many times where, for not many times, but one time, for instance, we had one rehearsal and we're doing a Mozart Marriage of Figaro overture, and the musicians have the wrong edition from what I have on my score. So right away, that takes away 30 minutes because I have to call the librarian and say, I have a different score from what they have in front of them. They have different, measure numbers, so you never know what to expect.
Here's a good question. So did they change yours, the 1, or did they change the 30 to accommodate you?
Yeah. So ideally it worked out because they had a score in the library of the edition that the musicians had, but it didn't have my markings in it. So here I am conducting a clean score without any of my markings in it. So that was a little terrifying because the musicians have all their bowings, their markings, but here I am, and the music is the same. But when I'm conducting a score, oftentimes we all have our own system of score reading or score marking, I should say. And that wasn't in that score. So you have to improvise a little bit.
Yeah. You love to talk to the audience. So, I mean, I've been to youth concerts where you turned around and told the story or gave context to whatever the piece was. And when you turned around, I thought, boy, this guy, he's on. You love that part of it. It seems like you really draw something from your audience when you get to talk to them. And I remember when I was a kid, the conductor never turned around. They just came out and did their thing and left. So that must be kind of liberating in a way, right?
I love it.
Get everybody on the same page, more or less.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I love the fact that I could share interesting information, facts about each composer, about the piece, and share that with the audience so they feel welcome. That's the goal, is to make everyone feel welcomed, to create an experience for them, not just musically, but to show them that, hey, I'm a person too. I have a personality. These musicians are people, and we are in this together. And Evansville has been so welcoming ever since I got here.
Yeah, you came in during the pandemic. Your timing couldn't have been worse, right? But no, I won't remind you.
Don't remind me.
And of course, the Philharmonic finishing up its 90th season. I guess you're already planning and working ahead. How far ahead do you have to work?
Oh, usually it's at least 1 year, sometimes 2. So we have obviously this coming season all planned out, ready to go. All the dates are set. Repertoire is pretty much finalized, and I'm already thinking about 26, 27. And I love that part of the job, the programming part of the job. It's so much fun.
Do you pick all the music, or is it done by committee, or how does that happen?
It's definitely more of a committee approach. I work with our executive director, Kim Breedemeyer, pretty closely, and I have these, I have ideas all the time, pieces I want to do as a conductor.
Sure.
And sometimes it just doesn't make sense because it might not fit with the community.
Mm-hmm.
It might not sell the tickets, and that's always on our minds. Will it sell tickets?
Uh-huh.
Will it Star Wars, fortunately everyone loves it, and that is almost sold out. But at the same time, there's so many factors in play: ticket sales, the budget for some of these pieces. You have to rent them, and sometimes the budget is extremely high to rent the music. Also, the number of musicians that you have to hire for each piece. A Mahler symphony has 80 plus musicians. That's really expensive for the orchestra. So I may not be able to program that in a given season.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is reliant on raising money. Our sponsors are really wonderful, who donate money and sponsor the concerts, because without them, we can't do anything.
Right.
So that's a real challenge. And that's part of the job, too, is being a fundraiser.
Chief fundraiser.
Yeah.
So you're chief cheerleader, coach, fundraiser,
so many
and
different
at some
hats.
point you also have to run the music part of it. You remember that.
And I always say that's something they don't teach you in school, or the number of different hats you have to wear as a conductor is they teach you in music school how to conduct, the theory, the music history, which is great. I mean, that is the priority, but so much of my job is administrative. So much of it is making sure the parts are organized, working with our librarian, working with our development director to go to lunches, dinners. We have a golf tournament next week at Oak Meadow, and I'm going to be there meeting all of
Are you a big golfer, or are you just going to go out and schmooze the golfers?
I'm not even going to play. I'm terrible. Everyone tells me, you're a conductor, you need to learn how to play golf, because that's a really important skill, I guess.
I've heard that too, and I've never learned to play very well.
Yeah,
so.
I was going to say, have you ever played a full
not
18
very well. No, I've played 18 holes
18
before. It was ugly, but I made it, from one end to the other. I had another question too. So when you bring a guest artist in, a soloist, whether it's piano or whatever instrument, how do you find those people? How do you find a soloist? Like you say, okay, we're going to do this piece, so we need a piano soloist. Then is there like a website, an agent, a catalog? How do you know? How do you find them?
It is all those different things you mentioned. A lot of it is personal connections. People that I either know from my travels as a conductor, people who I went to school with who are now making it big in the industry. I run a music festival in Lake George, New York, which is upstate New York, Lake George Music Festival. And every year we bring in up-and-coming artists, people who are really making a name for themselves in the field, younger musicians. And when I say younger, 20s, maybe 30s. And that has really been a wonderful resource, is to meet them at a festival like Lake George, which is a great summer music festival, and bring them to these different orchestras that I conduct. Another part of it is managers. I have a manager, so he has a roster, and a lot of the artists on his roster are people that I would love to work with. And then I get emails all the time in my inbox from managers like, hey, this pianist would love to play with the Evansville Philharmonic. Are you interested? And usually I put them in my like a junk folder, because I get so many. But every now and then there's an artist I'm like, wow, this person is really impressive, and I would love to work with them. But I'll be honest with you, I love working with people I know, people I could trust.
Well, that's understandable.
People I feel comfortable with.
That takes one layer of uncertainty out of the equation.
Absolutely.
So, well, what's the life like then for a soloist who comes in? So, and before you answer that one, how many rehearsals do you get before, like, say the concert's on Saturday? You rehearse for that how many times?
So
with the full orchestra.
So for classics, those are usually the Saturday night performances. We have only 3 rehearsals, which I will say is typical for an orchestra our size.
And is that like one each week prior, or 3 days in a row?
3 days in a row, So it's Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning, and they're each 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours, but it's not much time at all. But again, it's a professional orchestra. You expect people to know their parts, and they do, but it's not a lot of time.
So when the soloist comes in, then she performs at all those, or do you guys get your act together first, then you bring the soloist on, or how do you?
So it's a little different for the soloist. They come in during the second rehearsal, and I meet with them for about an hour, sometimes 30 minutes before we meet with the full orchestra, to just go through the piece, get their interpretation. A lot of times, the last thing you want is to get into the rehearsal with the full orchestra, and the soloist is playing one tempo, and you're doing one thing. But I always go with the soloist no matter what, unless it's something outrageous that they have. It's their moment to shine. They know the piece inside out. They know it better than I do. And sure, I study the piece, the concerto, but they're playing every note of some of the most virtuosic music ever composed, especially some of those violin concerti, piano concerti by Rachmaninoff, thousands of notes. They know it inside out, and I trust them, and we work it out. It's a wonderful opportunity. You're on it keeps me on my toes. It's like opera. You never know, essentially, in the performance, then maybe they get a little bit excited. You have to be right with them. So my eye is always on the soloist.
Yeah, and they're kind of behind you. That's going to be kind of hard.
I'm turned around. Obviously, the score is in front of me. But by that point, you know it. You got to trust yourself. And conducting concertos is one of the hardest things you can do as a conductor, because you never know what to expect. And you're essentially an accompanist. You're not the star, it's the soloist, and we are in service of the soloist. And there are times then where I have to take over. It's a give and take, but it's about the soloist and making their lives as easy as possible on the podium.
Yeah, when I see a concert with a soloist, you're always cheering for the soloist, of course, because you realize that's really, really terrifying.
Yeah.
And they come on, and then usually at some point while they're playing, I'll think, well, then what happens? Do they just go back to the hotel and collapse, or do they go out to dinner with you, or do they get on a bus and go to the next gig? I mean,
Some of them,
it seems like a very difficult life, to travel like that versus like what you do. And I know you travel a lot too, but you're here all the time with your guys and women, your familiar orchestra, but they're coming into a different place each time.
Yeah. They live, you're living out of a hotel and that's the life they signed up for.
Yeah.
It's tough, the next day typically they're off to another city. They're at the airport. Part of it is after a concert, you do celebrate. Part of it is I love getting to know our soloists and, creating a relationship where we could work together again.
Yeah.
And part of that is some of the most fun I've ever had is, the day of the dress rehearsal, after the rehearsal, bringing them to a restaurant in Evansville and getting to know them. Because for me, conducting is all about relationships, getting to know people. It's not enough just to wave my arms on the podium and make great music. It's really about getting to know the people who make who make up the orchestra, whether it's a soloist, a musician in the orchestra. That's what it's about, really. And that's why I love being a conductor. I get to talk to you. I get to really, seriously, I get to meet so many people. And that's the best part of it. In high school, I was so shy. I was a shy kid. I would hate to, trumpet.
Trumpet.
Yeah. I would hate to, I never participated really, but as a conductor, that it brought, I don't know, it made everything easier.
And you don't have that option to be shy. I mean, you have to be
not.
outgoing to do that job. I'm really thankful you got to come by here and we got to hash out a few things about the orchestra world. I got to ask most of my questions, about curiosity about it all. And congratulations on your 90th season and best of luck on the 91st. And we'll look forward to see what you do next. Roger Kalia,
Jeff.
Thanks for coming to Inside Look. You can listen to Inside Look wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch Roger Kalia on our 14 News YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us on Inside Look. Man, we could go all day.
We could go all day.
I know.
There's so much. This was great. I had fun.